Welcome back, everyone. Today I started playing in the FIDE World Blitz Chess Championship, which is being held here in Almaty, Kazakhstan. Now, as you guys know, I've done a recording for all the days of which I played in the FIDE Rapid Championship. However, today was the start of a new tournament. And obviously, after such a bad result in the Rapid, the most important thing was to get off to a fast start. Now, obviously, there are 12 rounds today and 9 rounds tomorrow, so I can't go over every single game. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk generally about some of the games. There are a couple of games that we will go over, which feature some critical moments. So in the first round, I started out by playing against Norbek Yakubov, a very talented Kazaki junior player, or maybe Uzbeki junior player. At any rate, I had the black pieces. He played d4. I chose to play the Dutch defense, trying to play something a little bit different. I won a very nice game in the first round. In the second round, I won against Sergei Yudin, a Russian international master. In the third round, I won an important game with the black pieces against Zavin Andreasian. So I got to a very good start with 3 out of 3. And in the fourth round, I was paired against none other than Nihal Sarin, the very talented Indian junior player who I played very recently in the Tata Steel Rapid and Blitz event, which was held in Kolkata, India. So without further ado, let's jump into the game. Now, at this point, I'm 3 out of 3. Magnus is 3 out of 3. A lot of other people, but I'm off to a good start. So in this game, I play e4, Nihal plays e5, and now I choose to play this move, bishop c4. Now, I must say that my inspiration was not Alexander Bortnik, who is a very talented streamer and fellow chess player from Ukraine, now living in the United States. But having seen him play this in a lot of Title Tuesdays, both against myself and also very recently against Magnus Carlsen, I thought, why not play something a little bit different? So I play bishop c4, knight f6, d3. Nihal plays bishop c5, c6, and knight c6 are both moves here as well. But he plays bishop c5. I go knight to c3 here. We get pawn to d6. And now I play this move, knight to a4, trying to go after this bishop on c5. Now, objectively, this is nothing special whatsoever, but it is still a move. So we get bishop b6 here. Now I chop the bishop on b6. I go knight to e2 here. Nihal castles. I play knight to c3, trying to prevent black from pushing the pawn to d5. Now here Nihal plays bishop to e6. I castle here, and now he plays h6. Now Nihal could have traded the bishops on c4 here, but after d takes c4, knight to c6, for example, I can now play b3, followed by ideas like bishop e3 and f3, and I have a lot of grip here in the center of the board. I control the d5 square, and it should be very pleasant to play. Now again, the objective evaluation here is probably nothing special. I would not say that it's necessarily great, but in a blitz game, if I have a lot of easy moves and my opponent does not have easy moves, that's already advantage me. So at any rate, Nihal plays h6, stopping bishop to g5. I go h3 here, knight c6, and now I play bishop to e3. I'm really inviting Nihal to trade the bishops, but of course he understands what I'm up to, and he plays d5 instead. So now I take, he takes back with the knight, we trade, and now I play this move, pawn to f4, trying to attack the pawn on e5, and force Nihal to decide what he's going to do here in the center. After a bit of a think, Nihal takes, I take back, he goes bishop to e6, and now I go queen d2. Now again, nothing special here, but the great thing about this position is that I have a very clear plan. What I want to do is I want to put my knight on e4, but I also want to bring my rook to e1 or double stack on the f-file and put my king on h2 here. And then after that, I'll figure out what the plan is, but I have a very simple 3 to 4 moves that I can play very, very quickly, and my opponent doesn't really have an obvious plan here. For example, black can play knight d4, he can also go knight e7 and knight d5, knight e7, knight g6, maybe f5, g5. It's a little bit bold, but it's an idea as well. Actually, ironically enough, the computer likes g5 and f5 here. So there are a lot of plans for black, whereas I have a very simple approach here. And if he does play a move like g5, I simply react to that move, and it shouldn't be too difficult. I shouldn't have to spend a lot of time. So at this point, I'm already feeling very, very comfortable. So here, after queen d2, Nihal goes knight d4, rook e1, he plays c6. Now I go a3 here, king h7, queen f2. Goes knight f5, I play king h2 here, again getting the king out of the center so that he can't play queen d4 and trade off the queens. Goes queen d4 anyway, I play queen f3. Now apparently bishop c7 here would have been very good for me, but in a blitz game here, I was already up a minute on the clock, and I'm trying not to sort of squander that advantage, looking for a killer blow unless I absolutely have to. So I play queen f3, queen d7, now I play a4, trying to prevent the pawn push to b5, rook e8, I go b3 here, connecting the pawns. Rook 8 d8 is played. Now I go rook to e4. Now I play c5, queen f2. knight d4, and here I make a big mistake. In this position, I play this move, bishop e5. Now here, initially, when I played this move, I thought that Nihal could not play bishop f5 because I simply thought that I could take the knight on d4 and take the bishop on f5, simply forgetting that the knight on c3 is hanging. Now this was a very important moment in the game because after bishop to e5, bishop f5 would have been a good move here. And probably the best thing that I can do here is actually give up the rook on e4, take with the knight, and after pawn takes queen takes f7, I have a great bastion here with the knight on e4. I have a knight and a pawn for the rooks. There is counterplay, but black is better at any rate. Also because he has rook c8, putting pressure on this backwards pawn on c2 at some point. Fortunately, Nihal does not play this. Now, Nihal was getting very, very low on time here. Initially, he went to reach for the bishop, and then he moved the knight to c6 instead, with only 1 second on the clock. Now, after he played knight c6, I decided to sort of trust my intuition here and sacrifice on g7. I used about 25 seconds. As you can see, I had 1 minute and 2 seconds, and he had 3 seconds, but I decided to sack because even though black's next 4 to 5 moves are obvious, I felt that with an attack here in very limited time, Nihal would not be able to defend. So he takes the bishop, I check, king h7, now I play rook h4, trying to go after the pawn on h6, queen d6 check, king h1, queen f8, now I go knight to e4, Nihal plays queen g7, now apparently rook d5 here, and black's very marginally better, but again, it's a borderline impossible move to find for a couple of reasons. First of all, I can move the queen, and there's a huge fork here on f6 here, which looks disastrous. Apparently rook e5 and black is better, but this is impossible with minimal time on the clock to find. So Nihal plays queen g7. Now here I play this move queen f4, which is a big mistake. What I should have played here was rook takes h6, because after queen takes rook, knight g5 check, black cannot move the king because you lose the queen on h6, and after queen takes knight, queen takes queen, white is a little bit better here because the king is open, I can lift the rook. Black can still defend here, but again, with very little time on the clock, from a practical standpoint, I should win this probably 90 to 95% of the time. So instead I go queen f4, Nihal plays queen g6 in 2 seconds. Obviously at this point he has to move instantly, he doesn't have time to really think. Now this is a big mistake because after knight f6, king g7 here, I now play rook f3. What I should have played is for the simple approach, I should have taken on e8 first and then gone rook f3, lifting the rook. And here black is simply lost because if you move the king, I go rook g3 here. And you cannot move the queen anywhere. Queen f5 runs into checkmate, queen f6 hangs the queen, and otherwise I take the queen and get a checkmate. So I should have done this, but instead I played rook f3 first, Nihal goes rook d4, and now I sort of panicked here. I played knight takes e8 after about 5 seconds. What I should have done here is I should have played the somewhat counterintuitive move knight to e4 back, and rook g3 again would be completely unstoppable, and this should be a pretty clean win. As I said before, one of the things that is really different between, actually I didn't say this on this recap, but one of the things that's very different between the Blitz and the Rapid is in the Rapid there is a 10-second increment. In the Blitz there is only 2 seconds. So with only 2 seconds increment, you don't have the same time to really think, you have to react instantly. Whereas for example, in this position, after knight e4, if Nihal has 10 seconds, he can use like 2 to 3 seconds trying to look for the instant reaction, but he still has a couple more seconds to sort of look for the other options. So that is one big difference. So I ended up taking on e8 here. Nihal goes king f8. Now I take, and we reach this position where I have 2 rooks for a rook, bishop, and knight. I additionally have 2 extra pawns as well on the king side, but black should be able to hold here with perfect play. So I go check, king e7, rook to e3, he goes rook f4, king g1, trying to stop the rook from infiltrating on f2 or f1 here. King f6 is played, I go rook e2, knight d4, rook d2, and here Nihal makes a big mistake. He plays bishop d5. Now Nihal did touch the bishop, and then he hesitated because he couldn't figure out where to put the bishop. As Nihal told me after the game, he was intending to go bishop d5, but he saw that I had this rook h6 move winning the pawn, and so then he was spent a couple more seconds looking for a move. The problem is if you go to f5, which is the other option to stop rook h6 because you have bishop g6, then I go rook b8 and you lose the pawns on b7 and b6, and it's a complete catastrophe. So after thinking for a few seconds and deciding that this was the best square, bishop d5 is played. Now I go rook h6 check, king g7, rook takes b6, bishop c6, and now I go a5. And at this point, it's very, very difficult. He plays rook f6 here. I go c3, knight to b5 is played, and now I go rook f2. I could have played d4 as well. This would have been good. But after knight takes c3, apparently a6 is the way to win here. If I take the pawn on c5, black actually is knight d5, trapping the rook on b6. So I had to be very, very careful. So instead I go rook f2, rook d6 is played, now I go rook f5, going after the pawn on c5, he takes, I play rook takes c5. He goes knight e2 here. Now, Nihal should have played knight to d5 here. And if he had actually found this move, probably the game would have ended in a draw, because the best that I have here is to take and go a6. But after pawn takes pawn, rook takes bishop, rook takes pawn, we end up in an endgame where I have rook in 2 versus rook in 1. But this should be a draw with perfect play. So Nihal instead checks. I go king h2, he plays rook to g6, trying to go after the pawn, and now I find the very nice move, rook c5, takes c6, because here if black takes with the rook, we simply trade. I go a6, and he can't stop the pawn from queening. Knight d4, a7, knight b5, a8, queen. So Nihal takes with the pawn, but now I go a6 here, plays rook g5, trying to bring the rook over to a5 to stop the pawn. If he goes to e6, I just go a7, rook e8, rook to b8, and I win the game. So he goes here, I go b4, stopping rook a5. Now he plays knight to f4. I go g4. Important move here as well, by the way, because now after rook e5, the rook is getting in, but the problem is that after a7, if he plays rook e2, I have king g3, attacking the knight on f4. And now after rook f2, king takes f4, rook a7, rook c6. White simply has 3 extra pawns, and this is very basic. So he goes knight d5, I queen, takes the rook, I take the pawn, and the rest is very straightforward here. There obviously is no fortress because I have a queen and 3 pawns for the rook and the knight, so just nothing is happening. I play queen c5, knight d7, check, knight to e5. Now I very quietly go king g3. Of course, knight f3 is not a threat because of the pin, but no reason to leave it to chance where I might lose my mind on the next move. So I go king g3, f6, b5, king f7, and now I play b6. And here Nihal resigns the game. Very, very tense game, lot of back and forth, but I do end up winning, and this takes me to 4 out of 4. So very, very important game to win against one of the rising prodigies from India, especially after India, where I let him off the hook a little bit. It was quite nice and satisfying to get this win. So I win this game, I moved to 4 out of 4. In the 5th game, I played Anishigiri with the black pieces, and we drew, and I want to say like 15 moves in a queen's gambit decline. Very, very boring game, unsurprisingly, of course. So that took me to 4.5 out of 5. And now we're going to move to the 6th round, where I had the white pieces against Fabiano Caruana. So in the 6th game against Fabiano with the white pieces, I decided to play c4 here. Fabiano plays e5, and now I play a sort of wonky idea with pawn to a3. Now, the reason behind playing this move pawn to a3 is very simple. I basically want to get something where we end up in some kind of Sicilian, and I get to play b4, bishop b2 early. Another player who played this recently in the St. Louis Rapid and Blitz event was Ali Reza Farusha against Jan Nepomniachtchi. So after a3, Fabiano goes c6, I play d4, and here Fabiano plays e4, which is a very surprising move. E takes d4, queen takes d4, d5 is all very standard. Nothing super exciting is happening. Instead, Fabiano plays e4, and now I go pawn to d5 very, very quickly. Now here, one of the reasons I play d5 quickly is that in a 3+2 game where you're only getting 2 seconds to increment, you don't want to spend a lot of time. And while bishop f4, d5, knight c3 is also very good for white, it's not clear what the next set of moves are going to be. And when I go d5, I know that I'm going to go knight c3, bishop f4, e3. Immediately, that gets me a couple of more moves in minimal time, and that'll help me get through the opening phase of the game. So Fabiano plays f5, I go knight c3, d6, now I take. If he plays knight f6 here, by the way, I think I can already play d6 here, and he's got this big problem with this light square bishop that can't really be developed. And if you try to go like, I don't know, like c5, then I have knight b5, threatening knight c7, and there are all kinds of bad things happening here. So instead, Fabiano plays d6, I take, he takes back with the pawn, I go bishop f4, knight to f6, now I play e3. Again, very, very simple play. I think I would have made Capablanca very proud with my approach in most of the openings today. So I play e3, bishop e7, play h3. I could go knight e2, but then maybe there's knight h5 going after this great dark square bishop. So I play h3 like you do in the London system. Castles, knight g2, because now knight h5, I can retreat the bishop to h2. So a5 is played by Fabiano. I go knight to d4, bishop d7. Now I play this move c5. Very nice move. Because if black takes, I have bishop c4 check, king h8, and then I go knight e6. Takes, I think I trade here, and then I take the bishop on e6. And even though black is up a pawn, I have the great double op combo. Also, the pawns on f5 and e4 weak, and you have a tower power that's not very strong at all on c6 and c5 here. And computer already gives us a huge advantage for white. So Fabiano goes d5. Now I go b4, protecting the pawn on c5 and creating the pawn chain. Knight a6 is played, and I go rook b1. Now, I probably should have taken here on a6 and just castled to keep it simple, but at this point, I was trying to move quickly and play logical moves. So I go rook b1, Fabiano trades, knight c7, bishop to e2 here, knight to e6, and now I go bishop to e5, sort of trying to reroute the bishop to this diagonal where it's a little bit better placed, because you look at the bishop on f4 just to illustrate it. This diagonal is very empty. There's nothing that the bishop is attacking here whatsoever. So by going bishop e5, now the bishop is on a better diagonal, and I can also play b5 because the bishop guards the pawn on c5. So Fabiano goes bishop e6, I castle, knight d7. Now I play f4 here, and he plays en passant. Now the reason I played f4 is very simple. What I want to do long term is, first of all, I want to prevent the knight from going to e5. Secondly, let's just to illustrate the point, what I would really love to do is eventually get my own knight to d4 here, where we have this great bastion, but I also cover the central square for the knight on d7, where it can't go to e5. So by playing f4, I figure eventually I can maneuver the knight to d4, and black doesn't have the e5 square for the knight. So Fabiano takes, I take back, he plays queen c7, I go knight e2 here, and now he plays knight to e5, and I go knight f4. I would love, of course, to have an extra move with bishop c3 and knight d4 here, but of course, at the end of the day, you can't get everything you want in life. That's just how it goes. So after knight e2, knight e5 is played, I go knight to f4, Fabiano goes bishop f7, and now I play b5, putting pressure on these central pawns. Now here, if black plays pawn takes pawn, this would be really bad, because after knight takes pawn, if black moves the queen, I simply swap and win the rook. And if he takes on d5, same thing, I win the rook on a8 here. And if he goes knight f3, queen f3, takes, king h8, this also is completely lost, because after rook takes b5, white has an extra pawn, but I have this amazing wooden shield here in the middle of the board on d4, and I can also play rook b7 in a move or two, and this should be completely winning for white. So this is very, very good if this had happened. So Fabiano plays rook a5, I go b6, now I have a protected passed pawn with a rook in front of the, or rook behind the pawn, I should say. Fabiano plays queen b8, I go queen c2, targeting the pawn on f5, knight c4 is played, knight d3, and now Fabiano finds this very crafty move, f4. Now after f4, what I should have done is use a little bit of time. As you can see, I was up 1 minute and 13 seconds here, 1 minute 32 to 19 seconds. I probably should have used like 15-20 seconds looking for the correct continuations, because if I had found pawn takes pawn, bishop g6, and the counterintuitive f5 takes and bishop g4, the game is essentially over, because the queen is super passive. I have these great diagonals for the bishops, and there's nothing black can really do here. However, I play this move queen c3. Now, this is also something that I want to point out. This is a great example of why the rapid event did not go in my favor. So when I play queen c3 here, obviously with a 2-second increment, it's very, very difficult to find the moves or what the best moves are. But if you have 10 seconds versus 2 seconds and you can build up 20 to 30 seconds, there's a lot of time to think. So this queen c3 move was not a good move. I had missed rook a3. I played rook b3. We trade. And now here, Fabiano used basically like 7 to 8 seconds, maybe even more than that, to take this pawn on e3 here. But if Fabiano had 30 to 40 seconds, I think there's a good chance that he would have been able to find this move, knight to d2. Now, after queen to a4, knight takes f1, king f1, it's still very bad for black, and it's hard to defend. But I do think that if Fabiano had gained those extra 10, 20, 30 seconds on the previous couple of moves, there's a good chance he would have been able to calculate knight d2 and play it. Whereas because he was only getting the 2-second increment, he had to sort of panic and make a split-second decision, and it is not the right one. He takes the pawn on e3 here. Now I go knight to b4, plays bishop e8. Apparently bishop g5 is okay, but a borderline impossible move to find with no time on your clocks. It simply hangs another pawn on c6. So Fabiano plays bishop e8, and this is the fatal blunder, because now I can go knight takes d5, pawn takes knight, and now I have bishop takes pawn, and we have a double wooden shield here in the middle of the board. Really, really nice position here. These double ops are incredible. So at this point, the game is essentially over. Fabiano plays king h8, we trade. Now I take the knight on c4, and with the 2 connected passed pawns, the double ops aiming at the king, and these bishops being very passive, there's nothing Fabiano can do. So he plays e2, I take the pawn, queen to d8, queen to e3, bishop f7, and now I go c6, and the pawns are simply rolling. I'm going to get a new queen sooner or later, and it's just completely hopeless. So Fabiano resigns this game, and with that win, I move to 5.5 out of 6. A very, very big win here. Fabiano obviously did well in the rapid, very formidable blitz player as well, but to win a game like this, very, very clean for the most part, it's really a good sign for the rest. It was really a good sign for the rest of the day. So I win this game, and now I move to 5.5 out of 6. In the 7th round, I played against Yu Yangyi from China. I decided to play the modern defense, be a little bit less a little bit less solid today. Take some chances. I was able to win that game with the black pieces to move to 6.5 points out of 7. Then in the next 2 games, I had some quick draws. I drew a very boring game with Magnus in round 8, Dubov in round number 9, or sorry, Magnus in round number 8. Sorry, I drew against Dubov in round number 9. And then in round number 10, I had the white pieces against Jan Krzysztof Duda from Poland. Now, this game is very important because this game sort of illustrates how volatile the event can be when you're playing Blitz, and this is a game that could have gone either way. So I start with e4, e5 is played, knight to f3, knight c6, I play bishop b5, Duda plays knight f6, and he plays the Berlin defense. Now, some of you will remember in the Chess Global Championship played in Toronto 2 months ago, Duda also played the Berlin. I showed one of my great candidate ideas in that game. However, I simply did not want to go right down the pipe in this critical 10th round game. Or sorry, this critical 10th round game. So instead I played d3, bishop c5, I decided to take and play knight bd2, knight d7, castles, knight c4, f6, and now I go king h1. Now, one thing that I remember is I played a Speed Chess Championship match against Wesley, so I want to say it was in 2020 or 2019 maybe even, and in one of those matches, Wesley kept flinging his pawns on the king side. He kept pushing p with g4 and h4 in various positions, and I also won a game in a recent title Tuesday where I started pushing the g pawn against Alireza Firouzja, so I figured try to play something similar. So Duda goes knight b6, I play knight to e3, bishop e6, and now I go rook g1, preparing to play g4. If I were to play g4 right away, then black can trade the bishops and take the pawn on g4. So I play rook to g1 here, and after rook to g1, Duda plays king h8. I go g4 anyway, because again, I'm simply trying to push the pawns, put a great knife on f5 if I can, and it's very, very straightforward and easy to play, which is why I chose to go for this. Duda plays a5, I play queen e2. Now, I'd love to go knight f5 right away, but then I hang the pawn. I don't want to allow that, so I play queen e2, a4, and now I put my knife on f5. Now, as we know, the famous creator of chess, also known as Garry Kimovich Kasparov, he always said that a knife on f5 is worth at least a pawn. Those of you who watch my Botez Gambit speedrun videos, I made a different comment, which at the time I thought was very apt, which is I said a knife on f5 is worth at least a queen. However, these are top-level players, a little bit different than a speedrun, so the same rules don't apply. Duda plays bishop d6, I go rook to g3. Again, very, very simple play here. I just want to move the bishop, put the rook on g1, go for g5, and just attack. Duda plays g6, I play bishop h6, rook f7, and now I make a mistake here. I play this move, knight takes d6. What I should have played is I should have trusted my instincts and just stack the 2 towers on the g file, because if black takes on f5 here, after g takes f5, let's just say bishop takes a2, for example, after knight to h4, followed by queen h5 and knight g6, even though I'm down a bishop here, it's a very worthless bishop on a2, the knight and the rook are off sides, and everything is coming for this king on h8 here. Instead, I played knight d6. Bad move, because mainly after playing this move, there's no longer any kind of attack. And also, my plans are not as simple anymore either. If I play rook g1, I know what my plan is. Knight h4, g5, something to try and attack on the king side. But when I take here on d6, now I have to shift gears, and I have to try to play in the center. I don't have obvious moves. And also my king is a little bit loose here because I played g4 and rook g3, and if I ever go g5, he has f5. So the rook and the pawn are a little bit clumsy here. And even though I'm getting a bit of a center, my king is loose. It feels a touch iffy at best. So Duda plays knight d7. Now I go c4. He takes. He plays queen e7 here. And now I play this move, bishop d2. What I should have played in this position was a move like rook to e1, knight to e5, and then something like b3, for example, even rook d1, knight e5, and b3 here. The reason I didn't do this is because I was actually worried there might be some move like g5, followed by rook g8 and rook g6, trapping the bishop on h6. Now, the reason that I should have done this is because when I played bishop d2, knight e5 here, I cannot play b3, protecting the pawn on c4, because after pawn takes pawn, I cannot take with the pawn, because I would lose my rook on a1. So I play rook c1. Duda, to his credit, makes a very good practical decision. He gives up the rook, the bishop and the knight for the rook, but he gets 2 pawns in return on c4 and e4. So I play f3, queen to e7 is played here. Now I go rook to g1, d5, queen d3. He plays rook e8 here. He probably should have played c5, but it's a very tough move to play with limited time on the clock because you're starting to push the pawns. And after a move like rook e1, queen d7, knight e6, the pawns, you don't really want them to get blockaded here. I might have bishop c3, bishop h6, and it's a very committal decision when the situation is not clear cut. So Duda plays rook e8, I go rook e1, queen d7, queen c3 here, trying to stop the pawn push and put pressure on the diagonal towards the king. Goes king g8. I play b4, trying to stop the c5 pawn push at all costs. We trade. Rook e7, I take, and now I play this move pawn to b4, stopping c5, queen e5, king g2, rook c8, and now I go queen c5. And after king f7, I play this move h4. What I should have played here was queen to a7. I don't know why I didn't play this move, because it puts pressure on the pawn. And after rook to c7, for example, I can just go queen b6. And even though it looks very scary here, the knight is always covering e2 and the queen is always guarding the knight. So I should be okay. Instead, I play h4, and now Duda finds rook a8, and the rook is active. It's coming down to the second rank, and this is very, very scary. So I play queen c3, rook a2, and here I make a huge mistake by playing this move queen d3. The only move to stay in the game here is a very awkward-looking king h3 because there's no rook a1 because the queen covers a1, knight covers the e2 square, queen holds the bishop. And this is maybe okay for white still, but very, very hard to play. Instead, I play queen to d3 here. Now, Duda only had seconds on the clock, so he wasn't able to find the win here. But when I played queen d3, I only saw queen f4. But for some reason, after queen f4, I thought I had knight e2 and I'd just be fine. But after... or sorry, not knight e2, sorry. After queen f4, I thought I had knight c2, sorry. But I simply missed this move, queen c4. And after queen c4, the game is finito. It is over. If I move the queen, I lose the knight. If I trade the queens, I will lose either the knight on c2 or the bishop on d2. And that's it. That's all she wrote. Game is over. Fortunately for me, Duda did not find it. He also has queen e1 here, by the way, which is winning as well, because after knight to c2, there's queen d1, and it's the same problem with the rook attacking the knight and the bishop. Fortunately, he plays queen d6. I go knight to e2. There's no queen takes b4 because now there's no pin on the second rank. b6 is played, h5, and now Duda plays c5. We swap all the pawns here. I go knight to c3, targeting the pawn on d5 and attacking the rook on a2 at the same time. Duda plays rook a3 here, and now I go queen to b1, looking to either go queen b7 check or queen to h1. Also, I have the idea of knight b5 forking the queen and the rook as well. So Duda plays queen c6, and now I go queen to h1, g5, queen h7, king e8, I check, king d7, and now I take on d5. Now here, what I should have played was this move queen to f7. If I had found queen f7, king d8, and then taken the pawn, I think there's a very, very good chance that I would have won this game, because after queen d6, I can simply swap, go knight e4, win the pawn on g5, and this should be technically winning. For whatever reason, I took the pawn here because what I saw during the game was I thought, well, if rook d3, there's queen h7, classic 90-degree right triangle. I win the rook on d3. If he plays rook a2, I can then fossilize him with knight takes pawn check and collect the rook on a2. So when I played knight takes d5, I just played it. Again, I had time here. I had like 20 seconds, but I just blitzed out, and then Duda finds queen e6. And now, again, it's very, very tricky in terms of how to play for the win. So I go queen h7, king c6, knight to c3, stopping queen e2 and stopping rook to a2 as well. Duda plays rook b3, queen d3, c4. I go queen c2. Queen d4, by the way, would have been a much better move. If I had played queen d4, I would have won. But again, at this point, we're low on time. I play queen c2. Queen e5, knight e4, attacking the pawn, queen d4, and this is where I throw the game away. What I should have played here was bishop c3, because after queen to d3, I had this move queen to a2 here, and this is completely winning. During the game, for whatever reason, I saw this move, and I simply panicked. Now, I can also trade here and go king f2, e3, which is winning as well. But again, I simply panicked at this point. I didn't play this move. If I had played this move queen e3 and queen a2, I would have won the game because after rook takes c3, I have queen a6 check. If you go to d5, it's checkmate in uno. If you go to d7, I fork with knight to c5. And after king c7, I go queen a5 check, hitting the king and the rook. And then after king c6, queen takes c3, the game once again is completely over, and I would have won. So this was a huge miss to not find this move. Instead, I play queen a2, but now after rook to b2, it's very, very hard to play because this pin is a big problem. And the queen covers a lot of the dark squares here. a7 and b6 as well. And after check king c7, I don't have a check here. Now I could have played king h3, and again, same thing with queen a5 check, same sort of situation where it's probably very good. Very, very difficult at any rate. So I play check, king b7, now I go king h3, he plays rook b1, I go knight g3. Of course, I also have to be very careful now, because say I play a move like bishop c3, there's check and checkmate. So I play knight g3, stopping rook h1, he goes rook b3, I go bishop b4, he takes, I check, and now here we repeat almost 3 times, but then I decide to take the pawn on c4. But after Duda plays queen c6, I decide to give up my chances of playing for a win here by trading the queens. simply because at this point, I didn't see how I'm supposed to continue. And the last thing I want to do here is risk something happening where there's maybe a rook f2 or queen g2 checkmate. And this game has been a very, very back and forth affair. And so I decided to trade. And after bishop f8, we agreed to a draw. Nothing that either side can do here. And with that draw, I keep moving forward. Still no loss in the tournament. But the main thing with this 10th round game that's really, really important to note, with that draw 8 out of 10 points, by the way, is that it could have gone either way. If I'd lost this game, it's very possible I would have tilted. I was able to keep it together. Obviously, I could have won. But again, very back and forth, so a draw is probably a fair result. So after this draw, I had 8 points out of 10. I was tied for the lead with Magnus Carlsen. And in the 11th round, I won a huge game against Hikaru Rosian, the Armenian Grandmaster. Very, very talented player. Maybe not a junior anymore. Maybe he is. I'm not sure exactly how old he is. Played him a lot on chess.com in the past. Very strong. I was able to win that game in a 2 knights tango opening. That moved me to 9 points out of 11. And the last game we're going to take a look at is from round number 12, where I played with the white pieces against Vladimir Fedoseev, also known as El Big Fish, from chess.com. Now, before we jump to the game, there is one story that I want to relate. So I played Vladimir Fedoseev in the Speed Chess Championship. I believe it was in 2020, and I beat him very badly. Now, after I won this match against him, he promptly blocked me on chess.com, and he has never unblocked me since. But the reason I bring this up is not to sort of make fun of him, but it's to point out that even though he blocked me on chess.com, we played in the Fisher Random Chess World Championship in 960. We played also, I think, in the rapid portion of, we played in the World Rapid Championship last year in Poland as well, and we are on pretty good terms. For all the people out there who expect some kind of draw fest or something, it just does not exist. All right, so let's jump into the game. So I play e4, e5. I decide to play bishop c4 in the bishop's opening. Again, if a great player like Alexander Bordik is going to play it every game, then why can't I? So knight f6, d3. Fedoseev plays bishop to c5 here. I go knight to c3, and now he plays c6, bishop to b3. d6, I go h3 here. Now the reason behind h3 is sort of, I stopped knight g4, but also I don't really want to play knight f3 and play some kind of Italian. It's very, very boring with the knight on c3. Also, normally in the Italian, you want something like, just to illustrate it, you normally want this pawn on c3 so that you can push and try to take some center here. So with the knight on c3 already, I didn't really want to go knight f3, so I decided to play h3 with a very simple idea of going queen f3, knight g2, and knight to g3. Queen e7 is played. I go knight ge2, a5, I play knight g3, h6, and now I go pawn to a3, just creating a square for the bishop just to be safe. b5, and now I play this move queen to f3 here, and I've gotten my great setup where I can put the knife on f5, I can castle, I can also play bishop e3, but it's a very flexible position with a lot of very simple plans, and I can just in a split second pick a plan and then rattle off 3 to 4 moves once again, and that will give me a big time advantage on the clock. Knight a6 is played, I castle, he goes bishop b6, trying to play knight c5, now I go bishop to e3 here, he goes bishop d8, which is a very strange move. Probably he should have traded here. Again, it's hard to really criticize Vladimir for not taking, because after queen takes e3 followed by a very fast f4, again, my moves are very, very easy, they're very straightforward, and he has to figure out what exactly he's doing. Is he castling? Is he playing queen a7, knight c5? Too many options, already down half a minute on the clock, just very, very difficult to play. So he goes bishop d8, I go knight f5, he takes, I take back, and now again I have the double op combo, the bishop's on e3 and b3, queen d7, of course I don't want to trade the queens, he castles, I play d4, trying to take some space in the center, and already here it's a very, very pleasant position. So he trades on d4, he goes rook e8, I play rook f e1, and now he blunders with queen c7. Now the problem with the position for black is that there really aren't many good ideas. If you play a move like knight c5, I can just trade and go e5 here, and there are a lot of problems in the diagonal. I also have rook a d1 here to attack the queen, and I think the black is just close to lost. Additionally, in this position, you don't really want to play c5, although it's the computer favorite, because first of all, there's e5 creating a fossil. There's also takes, and I can plot my pony on d5 as well. So none of this feels very good. And again, at this point, Fedoseev is already down a lot of time on the clock, down a minute and a half. And so he sort of has to just make a decision here, because nothing really feels right. c5 doesn't feel right. b4 doesn't feel right. Knight c5 doesn't feel right. And if without time on the clock to come up with a concrete plan, sometimes you just have to go, and the move that he chooses is queen c7 to try and stop the e5 pawn push. But here, to my credit, I accurately use my time. I think I used 30 seconds here, and I play this move knight takes b5, attacking the queen. After pawn takes knight, I go e5, creating the classic fossil here. I attack both the knight on f6 as well as the rook on a8. So at this point, the game is essentially over here for Fedoseev. There isn't much he can do. If he moves the rook, I just take on f6. This bishop on b3 is super powerful. The rooks on a1 and e1 are connected. And again, it's just totally hopeless. Black can pretty much resign here. So Fedoseev takes the pawn. I eat the rook on a8. He goes knight c5 here. Now I could have taken the bishop, but the problem is, again, I can just trade the rooks, take the knight, and I have an extra rook for the knight on extra rook on a1 for the knight on e8. And with this powerful bishop on b3, there's probably no counterplay whatsoever. So here Fedoseev plays knight c5, but unfortunately this is also a blunder because now I just take the pawn, and after rook takes bishop, rook takes rook, queen takes rook, I just take the bishop on d8. And here it's simply a matter of technique. To boot, I have an extra minute on the clock, but I have a rook for a knight, and so it's just a matter of making sure there's no counterplay. So king h7 is played. I take the pawn on a5. He goes knight fe4. I go queen to e1. Not the best move, but again, the only chance Black has here is some kind of idea like, I don't know, let's say I play, let's just say rook b1, for example, something like knight takes f2, where maybe there's some knight e4 and some kind of fork or something happening. Now, again, even this is actually just cleanly winning, but something along these lines is what he was hoping for. So I go queen to e1, protecting the pawn on f2. He takes. I play a4 here, trying to swap off the pawns. He takes. I take with the rook. Black cannot take the rook, so then I take this knight with check, and then I collect the other knight on a4 here. So he plays knight to f6. I go rook to b4. He takes. I take back. And here he actually flagged. He played queen c2 with no time left on the clock. But even if he had time after queen c2, I just go rook b7. And with this extra pawn on b3, this should be pretty straightforward. And I can win this game very, very simply. So with that win, I end the day on a score of 10 points out of 12. I am 1 point ahead of Magnus Carlsen, as well as a slew of other players who are tied for second place. So I'm pretty happy with the results so far, but we have 9 more rounds tomorrow to go. Long way. Obviously, I'm not counting the chickens before the eggs have hatched, or whatever that saying is, but I feel very good so far, and I just have to keep up the good form tomorrow. At any rate, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap. Make sure to hit that subscribe button below if you have not already, and we'll be back tomorrow with another recap from the second and final day of the World Blitz Championship here in Almaty, Kazakhstan. See you guys soon. Bye.